We are sponsored by the Pacific Grove Public Library, Friends and Foundation, lovely people who support us, and support from the Whitney Latham Leachick Trust for Poetry. We are very fortunate to have this trust and funds which allow us to produce these poetry events. Tonight, I'd like to introduce Daniel Summerhill. Daniel is a poet, performer, and assistant professor of poetry at Santa Clara University. He was the inaugural Poet Laureate of Monterey County. Daniel's work has appeared in Columbia Journal, Obsidian, The Progressive, Academy of American Poets, and elsewhere. Author of two collections, Divine, 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 and Mausoleum of Flowers, both of which you can check out from the library. Daniel has earned fellowships from Baldwin for the Arts and the Watering Hole. Also, at our advocacy table in the back, we have Joy and Derek Williams, representing the advocacy group ELACC Black, which he founded. And thank you so much for being here tonight with me. And now I'd like to welcome, please join me in welcoming Daniel.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. It's good to see you all. Please tell me if you can't hear me, because I'm not going to use a microphone. I have a son due in 2 weeks. I know. Oh, wow. That's exactly what is happening in my mind and body and spirit. And this is number 3. This is the first little boy, and for me, it's caused the most stir, maybe so to speak. Not because it's a little boy. I think more so because this is the third kid. But in all seriousness, it's driven me to be more calm and deliberate and slow in everything, but especially in the way that I speak and think. And so because I've been here a few times to this library and I feel like I know many of you, I see many returning faces, this is going to be a lot more conversational and perhaps intimate than the previous iterations have been. And I'm going to read some stuff, maybe ramble in the middle, and hopefully you all will get something out of this, feel moved, which is the mark of a good poem, right? Being moved. Yeah. I'm also coming up on the penultimate month of my term as the Poet Laureate, which has been a very good 2 years. Yeah, I've been able to visit a number of high schools, both on the peninsula, in Salinas, even in South County. I've been able to go to Soledad and King City, Greenfield. Many of those times workshopping, reading, hanging out with young folks, and that's no small thing. Their imaginations, minds, creativity is otherworldly. Been able to visit like MPC. I was able to curate this anthology of writers talking about the Black history of Monterey County. Lead workshops through the Monterey County Free Libraries. Led a workshop earlier today at the Colton Hall Museum. So just many interactions with folks, right? And I think that can be like quantified in some way, but I guess I'm more in awe of the quality of relationships and connections that I've been able to foster over the last couple of years. So thank y'all for allowing me to, champion poetry, share my work, share space with your young folks in your community. It's been good. And if you know someone who would like to be the next Poet Laureate of Monterey County, you can check out info at Arts for MC, who is the kind of governing body for the program. Um, I also, have been really heavy, of course, as we likely all have been, right? Today, October 20th, is a day in which many artists and writers all over the globe kind of organized as a global strike in a call to end of ethno-cleansing and genocide in the Middle East. So I just want to make sure that I affirm my kind of solidarity. There's been a history of both the black struggle and the Palestinian struggle for since the civil rights era, and some would argue even beyond, or before rather. James Baldwin, who you'll hear me mention quite often tonight, was a firm believer in the liberation of folks here being tied to the liberation of folks across the globe. And I'm in the school of James Baldwin, so I have to also believe in that. Okay, I've said some stuff. Let's get to Whitman and democracy, and Whitman's like kind of firm belief in the poet and the poet's kind of symbiotic relationship with the world. That's also something I believe in, something the folks that I love and look to, such as June Jordan's, right? Toni Morrison's, Audre Lorde's. Those are the folks who also believe in that similar thing, right? And so the work that I write, the way that I think, operate, move in the world is always in conversation, in empathy, in conversation, in service of the greater world, right? I talked about Langston Hughes also folks were like, yo, I love your jazz talk back in whenever that was. And thank y'all for coming, for folks that came and listened to like the jazz. It was the name of the exhibit, Harlem, help me out. The Harlem Renaissance. Yeah. That was really fun, actually. Enjoyed it. There will be no music tonight, though, unfortunately. I'm just going to read some poems, perhaps. But anyways, what I was going to say is that James Baldwin was a frequent believer in this idea of solidarity and thinking about oppressed people as a universal thing, in which the name or label of the oppressed people is oftentimes just a new way to categorize oppression, right? So if we're thinking about like queer folks or folks that are part of the LGBT plus community, right? That's just a new label for folks to be oppressed or suppressed, right? And so there was always this conversation between the people and the poet, as Langston Hughes would say. And Langston Hughes was careful to characterize himself as a people's poet rather than a poet merely concerned with aesthetics for aesthetic's sake. What do they have to do with this exhibit? Well, Walt Whitman was also in that same school and thought of both himself as a singular person, but then a singular person in connection, in community, in conversation, and also wrestling with the same things, both in the physical realm and in the spiritual, right, and any other realm we can imagine of, right? Walt Whitman was also of no absolution from problematic things, right? Although he, in some ways advocated for the abolition of enslaved folks, he also believed black folks shouldn't vote because their minds were like of baboons, is what he said, right? So this idea of really wrestling with the self in relationship to other folks is super important, especially as we talk about the wholeness of a particular poet such as Whitman. Yeah. Well, Whitman wrote a bunch of poems, right? I mean, he's a poet, yeah? I'm going to read. You all are probably familiar with the one this exhibit is named after, right? Ourselves we sing, or ourselves I sing. there's a number of other poems that are similar in the vein of thinking about the self in relationship to others. There's One's Self I Sing, right, by Whitman. One self I sing, a simple, separate person, yet utter the word democratic, the word in mass of physiology from top to toe I sing, not physiognomy alone, nor brain alone, and worthy for the muse, I say, the form complete is worthier far, the female equally with the male I sing, of life immense in passion, pulse and power, cheerful for freest action from under the laws divine, the modern man I sing, says Walt Whitman. I hear America singing in 1860. Y'all know what battle rap is? Anybody heard of battle rap? Yeah, I hear some mm-hms and nods. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to explain what it is. But essentially, it's call and response, right? It's what folks did in there with those exhibits. It's artists, rappers in this case, kind of going back and forth, right? Engaging in one another, sometimes in ridicule and jokes. But it requires a great deal of investment in that other person and understanding what the other person has to say and an attempt to respond to that person, right? I have a theory about Walt Whitman and Langston Hughes and some other folks too. And this is a suite of poems that kind of speak to that theory. This is Walt Whitman's I Hear America Singing. 1860 is when this was written, or published rather. I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be, blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or beam, the mason singing as he makes ready for work or leaves off work. The boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat, the deckhand singing on the steamboat deck, the shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench, the hatter singing as he stands, the woodcutter's song, the plowboy on his way in the morning or at noon intermission or at sundown, the delicious singing of the mother or of the young wife at work or the girl sewing or washing, each singing what belongs to him or her and to none else, the day what belongs to the day. At night, the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs. So that's Walt Whitman, y'all. What a poem, right? When do we sing? When do y'all sing? Tell me when you sing. Shout it out. In the shower, definitely. I'm in the car. I'm definitely a shower and car singer. In the morning, someone said? At work in the morning, sure. When you wash dishes, get you through, yeah. In most of those occasions, right, it's a representation of joy. Walt Whitman, in this poem, everyone doing their thing seemed joyous, right? And in fact, the poem ends, the day what belongs to the day, at night the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths, their strong, melodious songs. So this poem is of joy, right? Of fervor, of momentum. Yeah, 1860. Langston Hughes came along about 60 years later, 1926, and published a poem named I Too. Now, I have a theory. This is my theory, has not been proven, that this poem is Langston Hughes' battle rap response to Walt Whitman some 60 years later. Yeah, so this is, Langston Hughes' I Too. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. What's the tone of that one, y'all? What you think? Say it again. One more time, man. Oh, you want to cry. Please do and don't. Okay. All right, later. You okay? What's the tone of this poem?
It's predictive.
Sure.
What's going to happen?
Oh, yeah. So we're talking about the turn. So hold on to that. What's your name?
Mary.
Mary? Cool. Thanks for that, Mary. You're absolutely right. There's a turn. Yeah, Derek.
Self-realization.
Sure, self-realization. I heard over here something. You said proud. There's a proudfulness, pride. Yeah. Good. Hopeful. Yeah. So there's a sense of yeah.
Eschew obfuscation.
Oh yes, eschew obfuscation. Absolutely. Here's the deal with this poem. Right. We begin. I am the darker brother, and they send him where to eat. In the kitchen. Right. Not at the good place. Not at the table. And say you got to eat in the kitchen. Right. Darker brother. But then Langston Hughes laughs. This laughter is signifying of what, y'all? Defiance. Yeah. Ha ha ha. Right? I laugh and eat well and grow strong. And then tomorrow signifies what, y'all? A future, a hope, a newness, right? Something beyond today. Yeah? I'll be at the table when company comes, and nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. And then not only that, but besides, they'll see how beautiful I am. And not only that, but they'll be ashamed, right? So then there's a rebellion, there's a pride, right? There's a self-reflection, and there's also, I'm going to turn to you, audience, reader, world, right? He who sends me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, you're going to see I too, right, am America, right? We're talking about Whitman, we're talking about this idea of democracy, which includes the everyone, right? Kendrick Lamar, only Pulitzer Prize winning rapper ever, in 2014, from his song I says, they want to say it's a war outside, bomb in the street, gun in the hood, mob of police, rock on the corner with a line for the fiend and a bottle full of lean and a model on the scheme. These days of frustration keep y'all on tucking rotation. I duck these cold faces, post up fee-fi-fo from bases. Dreams of reality's peace, blow steam in the face of the beast. Sky could fall down, wind could cry now. Look at me, I smile, says Kendrick Lamar, some 80 years later, right? They're all talking about the same place. They all got different voices. They all got different visions and understandings of this place we call America, right? Yeah, the United States, yeah. They all were thinking about reflecting the times, as Nina Simone would say, right? All of their truths are valid. All of their voices are valid and should be included, yeah? I'm going to read a poem now that I wrote shortly after the flooding happened, especially of Pajaro Valley. And I said earlier in the workshop that Mother Nature doesn't need our help, but we do lend a hand in many ways. And that's usually through policy and making the wrong decisions. Yep, so here's Backwater Blues for Pajaro Valley with lines from Bob Dylan. Bessie Smith has a song of the same name, and Marilyn Chin wrote a poem after Bessie Smith's song. So this is Backwater Blues for Pajaro Valley with lines from Bob Dylan after Marilyn Chin, after Bessie Smith. A board carved through a valley. The border carved through a valley. The bloodiness of failure. The people speak of rivers and lifeblood. The people speak of rivers. The suit knows the border is a flood. The suits know the border is a flood. The sky blackens over these land keepers. The sky blackens over the land. The highway swells to the north. The sky, a shadow of western expansion. The sky, a shadow expands. the relief from derelict, unkempt rations. Familiar blues, the sound of running water. Familiar blues, the sound of running. Mississippi, Katrina, Pajaro. We name ourselves after the constellation. We name ourselves after the constellations. Estrella, Sitlali, Luna. The river swells in circadian fashion. The river swells in circadian fashion. We return home to the home we've made. We fire and not ourselves together. We fire and not ourselves together. Our bond, a prayer and a half it forms. Come in, come in. The rain is coming. I'll give you shelter from the storm. So, we have to discuss, as poets, what we see. In fact, they say poets have a really tough job because they have to see what the politician, the boatman, the lawman, the child, the teacher, the musician, and what they all see, and to try to articulate that, right? And put it into this distillation we call poetry. Oftentimes that requires us, as Whitman, as Jimmy, as Toni Morrison would say, requires us to face things and confront things we often don't. And usually those things are the hideous things that reveal ourselves, yeah? And so it's important to also run towards the thing that haunts you, as James Baldwin would say, right? Even the ugliness of policy failure that impacts thousands, sometimes millions of folks. I'm going to read a happy poem. Or a lighter poem, perhaps. No, I'm not. I changed my mind. Here's what I'll do. I'm just going to jump into some work, yeah? 2 of these poems are older poems from Divine, 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 and then everything else after that is from a work in progress, which hopefully will be out next year. We'll see what happens. This is concerning fire. I can hardly imagine all this rage going to waste. How our bodies are anti-combustible anyway. Hard to imagine us feeling remorse for fire our skin has always been glazed in. A kind of clay we've claimed as skin, or kin. A rage we've claimed as kin. Hard to imagine any other way of shedding light on injustice but through brimstone. Heat and equality are fundamental rights, and right now, I choose to fan this flame. Been brewing for years. Yesterday was kindle. Sometimes all we need is to weep until our wells run dry. Other times, all we have left is fire, and will burn anything attempting to put out our flame. Hard to imagine being on the wrong side of all this smoke. This is today's prayer, and it begins with an epigraph by Ocean Vuong, which says, "My son, tell them the body is a blade that sharpens by cutting." Today's prayer. Today's prayer is for honing still, a third testament that black folks anchor to their galvanized body and ink. Today's prayer is for a radical revision. In this variation, Jesus grew up in Oakland, off Seminary. And Oakland don't have 2 cheeks. After the first, you'll discover how sharp black can be. In this variation, Simon, Andrew, and John are Angela, Eldridge, and Huey. Today's prayer is for honing still and a chopping block. Today's prayer is for peer review. Today's prayer is to revise and resubmit. Today's prayer doesn't include submission. Today's prayer is broadcast from Calvary, and Longinus didn't get the good side. In this variation, we don't lose blood, just dull shrapnel. Today's prayer is for a blade. Today's prayer is for a self-sharpening body. All right. Thanks, Ann. The journalist asked if I'm angry that I never met my father. True story. Ma'am, I was a black kid who called Kobe dad in my journal at night. Imagined him dropping a defender at the elbow. Some version of his reverse pivot fadeaway before kissing my forehead at the end of a game. Mini fro like his. Imperfect in reaching for the sky. And what black boy didn't want a reason to carry around a fist in his back pocket? Once, my brother-in-law bought me an airsoft gun so we could do what all young men do when they are aspiring marauders. On the television, they're debating the bloodiness of a settlement, debating the guilt of a demigod. I aim my muzzle at the first thing moving, astray, but missed. We both trembled in amnesty. How when you admire a human, sometimes you inherit their violence too. When you admire a god, you wonder what it cost them. But back to the journalist, whose hands are writing a narrative other than my own. If I had more courage, I'd tell her I was joking when I said I never met my dad, and do, in fact, know him. And in fact, he's a shooting star who got lost somewhere near Pluto, can never figure out what to call a kicked rock who's lost its name. Or he was a trigger that jammed every time he saw a ghost. Or my father was an escape artist, except every time he dodged a bullet, a piece of him disappeared with the wind. The breeze came back together. Wind plosive and pronounced. Wind spit back a boy, a baritone breath screaming, see, here I am, and I'm bulletproof. Still in conversation with Whitman, y'all. This is a long poem. It's called Flood. It's an alternate rendition on the famous flood. Yeah. Look, Noah was short a bird and threw my ancestor in the boat instead. This is how the black swan got its melanin. How they call us unprecedented now, unpredictable even. God left the sky running and said he'd never do it again. It's always the arrogant ones that make mistakes. It's always the animal with wings trying for freedom that suffers the most. The homies don't know words like antediluvian, but can nail a jumper anywhere 28 feet in. Malik could make the metal net sound like a wind chime in a storm. Wrist raised like a Doppler. We knew the outcome by the angle of his arm. Malik, the geometrist. Malik, the physicist. Malik, the god of rain. Once, during the playoffs, Malik hit 4 in a row and sent the crowd to the rafters. Everyone clasping hands with the person beside them. Everyone air suspended like a held breath, which is to say, we didn't need an ark to float. Circa 1998, Victor's trembling ankles anchor him to the edge of the slide. The water waits. Imagine watching your friend attempt to take flight in search of his father. Hurt is always on the cusp, tilted more towards us like the earth's axis, slow nodding to the moon. He let go and got wings. The waves teach me to surrender the way he did, crashing through the water, death nodding back, another flood. Always the wings making ghosts of black boys. Once upon a time, people were stolen and dropped off in the middle of the ocean,